I offer this podcast freely. Your support really makes a difference. To make a donation, visit reneemckenna.com. Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about spiritual parenting. And I would say there are three aspects of spiritual parenting. And first is the parental dynamic that we experience in our own spiritual practice or lack of spiritual practice. The second aspect of spiritual parenting is how we parent ourselves, our own internal dialogue, and how we care for or abuse ourselves. And the third is how we parent or care for those that we are responsible to or have intimate relationships with in our life. So let's look first at our receiving parenting as a child of God or the universe. And the parenting style and experience of what we receive from our caregivers as young children usually sets a template for our conception or perception of the larger consciousness system. If we have caregivers who are loving and present, then we will naturally expect Source to be loving and supportive, nurturing and trustworthy as we move through our life. If our caregivers are inconsistent, controlling, or conditional in their love and care, then it is natural that we would project that onto God or Source as well. If the parents, teachers, or adults in our life are absent, neglectful, disinterested, or unaware, or unable to care for our needs, then we will expect that the life force is disinterested or unavailable to us as well. And if our early experience is one of violence, abuse, or trauma, then we may come to believe that life is a dangerous place and the best we can do is to protect ourselves from it. Because for small children, parents and caregivers are the gods and goddesses controlling their life. And young children instinctively know that they cannot survive on their own and that their survival does depend physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the health or dis-ease of those responsible for them. And these birth configurations are not a coincidence. It's a very powerful aspect of what's commonly known as karma. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to episode 48, Karma and Family of Origin. But I'm happy to report that we are not doomed to the template created in our childhood. In fact, that template could be understood as the set of instructions for our own soul's growth and development in this lifetime. And it can be very powerful to consider even those who harm us as our teachers on this soul level. It was once suggested to me the possibility that before we incarnate, agreements are made with the other souls in our life who volunteer to push and challenge us so that we can grow and evolve. This is not on a personality level, but on a spiritual or soul level. Something interesting to consider. I know for me, the most painful relationships in my life have absolutely been my greatest teachers. I think of my friend Rhonda, a very gifted acupuncturist and healer. We trained together years ago, and part of our training was to connect with higher consciousness through guides and teachers. And she had very wise and powerful connections of high resonance that she could run through those needles. But her practice stayed very small. She was lonely and lived in financial fear. She had a very controlling and manipulative mother and a very sickly sister, and they sucked her life energy on a regular basis. And she spoke to her mother every day, sometimes more than once a day. And if she didn't call, the guilt was almost overwhelming. And her mother was a very fearful and demanding person who sucked the life energy from her children and refused to let them go, to grow and develop and walk their own path separate from her in the world. And it became very clear that Rhonda would not progress professionally, relationally, or financially as long as she was feeding her life energy to Lydia, her mother, that she was being called to make the shift from her biological family into her spiritual family, to source approval, guidance, love from her spiritual guides and teachers, from nature, from a more mature relationship with the God of her religious heritage in Judaism. But she could not make that shift. The grip of Lydia was too much. And the last I saw Rhonda, she was still living in an overcrowded studio apartment with dark circles under her eyes, struggling to make ends meet and dating yet another emotionally unavailable man. And I know for myself, with a deep mother wound, connecting with the Great Mother through prayer and meditation, through inner journey work, completely transformed my life. There is an infinite resource of love and compassion, discipline and strength available through the many forms of the divine feminine. Mother Earth, Kali, Isis, Tara, the Marys in Christianity. And as I practiced connecting with the high resonance of the divine feminine, the cycle of dependence and disappointment that I had been practicing with my own very weak and sickly mother dissipated, and my conception of God and Goddess began to change through my experience of receiving what I most deeply needed, which was not just unconditional love and acceptance, but a very firm hand pushing me to grow, challenge myself, to do the scary thing, and face my difficulties, and become my best self in the world. Where my own parents had let me stay home when I was scared to go to school, my spiritual mother told me to show up, go have your diarrhea, journal, make phone calls, cry if you need to, walk through and face the fear, because it will make you stronger. And challenge makes us grow. And that spiritual parenting began to integrate into the way that I treated myself and the way I treated others, just like human parenting can do. But we always have the opportunity to change our behavior, to do things differently. And we're supposed to need help in that process, because giving and receiving help in all its different forms elevates the experience for everyone involved. And I've needed a lot of help along the way to show up for my own life. And that help has been there, both in human and in spiritual form. And I need both. I think we all do. And just like our own response or reaction to the caregiving we receive as children is projected out into our expectations of how the world will treat us, we also internalize our own survival mechanisms in how we relate internally with ourselves, our own inner dialogue. And I had a horrible inner dialogue. I came to hate myself, reject my body. I was never good enough. I talked to myself in ways, if any person ever said that to me, I'd punch him in the mouth. If I made a mistake, I would call myself horrible names, constant berating, criticizing. Internal tirade of self-rejection drove me to drink and use drugs and eat compulsively, make myself throw up just to try to drown it out. And I'm happy to report that those voices don't exist anymore. They've been dissolved, transformed, elevated, or replaced. That I am loving and kind to myself internally today. I'm proud of myself because I've done things to be proud of. I have grown in self-esteem because I have done esteemable acts. I have self-respect because I act in respectable ways. Not perfectly. I've done a lot of unrespectful things in my life. And I've had to grow in forgiveness and compassion and extend the same level of understanding that I have for others to myself as well. The golden rule says to love God with all your heart and to treat others as you treat yourself. And that triangle of God or the life force, others, and myself is a very powerful way to look at where I need to grow. Am I loving, trusting, hopeful, brave in my relationship with life and the world at large, in my relationship with others, and my relationship with myself? We all have places where we're highly developed and underdeveloped. And actually always had pretty good relationships with other people, but my relationship with myself and my relationship with life, those needed some work. Not that I didn't have dysfunction with humans as well, but some people have a really solid faith in God and no faith in humans. Some people have a natural sense of self-care, but don't experience the care of the universal force. So it's good to start where we are with the strengths that we have and build on those to expand them into these other areas of our life. Self, God, others, the hypotenuse triangle on this plane of reality. And others includes those that we are responsible to care for, our children, our lovers, our own families and communities. So we have the spiritual parenting that we receive from the life force. We have our internal dialogue, our own internal self-parent that may be healthy or unhealthy, abusive or supportive. And then we have our spiritual relationship with the other humans in our life. And do we approach those relationships with fear or with love? And spiritual parenting for me is to recognize that all of those that I care for are also children of God. Even the ones that I birthed. I am their biological mother, but they are children of the universe. And I am here to steward them, but not to control their life experience. They have their own karma, their own soul's journey, their own challenges and difficulties that will come to make them grow. It's my job to love and support them, to be present, and to let them go. That even my own babies have their own path separate from mine, that I cannot walk for them or even with them after a certain point. And that the challenges of caring for others, whether they are my children or my lovers or my friends or family, the challenges of letting go with love really poke right into the places where I remain underdeveloped. My desire to control or protect, my own lack of trust in the human life cycle of birth and death. Can I truly respect another's soul path, even if it's difficult and I don't understand it? Spiritual parenting, spiritual relationship, truly loving another, not the selfish love that needs you to be a certain way so I feel secure, but the mature love that truly wants you to grow, even if that means you moving away from me. Rhonda's mother would constantly tell her how much she loved her, but it wasn't love, it was neediness and fear. And that force that they called love was actually destructive in Rhonda's life. And mature love is always constructive in the long run. And so how do we spiritually parent those in our lives, or turn them over or connect them with the spiritual parenting of God and the larger life force? To pray for their highest good, to be a source of unconditional love and compassion that we would like to receive, to be present with each other in the mystery of our own evolving humanity, and support the authentic soul self of each person in our life that comes here, and let go of our own agenda. And that includes the children in our life, who may be very different from what we expect or would like them to be. And that's our work to grow in acceptance, in maturity, and in true love and support. So I encourage you to consider where you are being called to grow in your relationship with spiritual parenting, in how you parent yourself, in your relationship with God, divinity, the larger consciousness system, as a spiritual caregiver for you. What's your relationship with your own biological family, whether you have relationship with them or not? And where can you mature and develop or use spiritual principles in relationship with those that you care for, the children in your life, but also those who benefit from your love, support, and nurturing? We are each like little transmitters in the world, putting out a particular resonance of energy. And taking responsibility to elevate that resonance is some of the most important work that we can do. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and the generous donations that are so gratefully received. And there's a link to my Patreon in the show notes. If you benefit from this podcast, your support is incredibly helpful for me. And if you have a moment to give me 5 stars on Spotify or a good review on iTunes, it moves the show up in the ratings, makes it easier for others to find. Some of you know I have moved to New York City. I want to let you know that everything is so good. We found a great apartment and I've already connected with community here. It's fun to be back on the East Coast and I'm loving the vibe. Really looking forward to seeing what life has in store for me here and how I can be of service. So thank you for all the good wishes and all the love and support that I've received. I'm going to be doing some free workshops in September: spiritual parenting, being your own shaman, and connecting with higher power. And if you'd like to find out how spiritual psychology might benefit you in your life, or learn about my mentorship program, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com, or DM me on Instagram @ReneeLaValleeMcKenna. And if you'd like a jump start to your own intuitive connection with spirit, I'm offering 75-minute tarot readings on Zoom. If you'd like a deep dive of empowerment, guidance, and connection. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaVallee McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.